So this is episode 7. We're already up to 7.
Dang.
I was thinking we could call this Lucky Episode 7, and maybe one listener wins $1 million.
Not
think
from
of that
us,
idea?
not from us, but from some other organization. They win $1 million.
Yeah,
Okay.
that listener maybe plays the Powerball lottery and wins $1 million, but we could tie it into Lucky Episode 7.
Right. We're not going to give them
No.
$1 million, but they could win
Right.
at some point
Genius.
in their life.
Yes.
Okay.
God, I'm horny.
The Musers, the podcast. Episode 7, Ode to Our Parents.
Welcome to the Musers, the podcast. I'm Craig Miller.
I'm George Dunham.
And I'm Gordon Keith.
We are the Musers. We've been doing a morning radio show in Dallas, Fort Worth for 30 years, and now we're trying our hand at podcasting. I am liking it so far. There is an immediacy to live radio that I love, talking about breaking news as it happens, but I'm also really enjoying the more laid-back nature of this podcast, which oddly, and I think we've all observed this, feels way more intimate than radio, yet radio has always been considered a very intimate medium.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But why is that?
I don't know.
Giorgio and I were just complaining about this, about whatever this truth serum is that hits us when we go into podcast mode and how completely unwise that is. Because for some reason, broadcast radio feels very ephemeral. It feels, well, I should say it feels like that's on the record when we're on
yes,
the radio.
very on the record.
And then we do a podcast and we go, okay, this is the secret thing, and we can be real vulnerable and just spill all of our deepest, darkest secrets, and not realizing this is more permanent than radio ever was.
Right.
Yeah. Not today. I'm not falling for it. This is on the record. On the record. And I'm not going to tell you anything new. No, I think I found that too. And I don't know why that is exactly, but is it because we are facing each other and we're in a
Smaller
higher
room?
studio?
I think
Yeah.
so. So I was talking about this with people of my choosing recently,
Mm-hmm.
and there's something about the fact when we go in here, we know that we don't have a break that's looming over our head or something that we have to get to. And so we don't have laptops in front of us because we don't need to monitor breaking news. And so we're all actually looking at each other and having a conversation in a way that in radio, you have half a mind on what you're about to do next,
Mhm.
half a mind on what you're doing now, and half a mind on watching your computer to make sure nothing is happening that you're not
And
aware of.
we're sitting at a very small table. In our radio studio, it's a big table. There's distance between us, but here it's like you're at a bar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Why did we build Henry VIII's dinner table in order to broadcast from it?
I don't know. That table is huge, and I usually don't look at you guys much. I have to look at Gordon. He's right across from me when we do our radio show. But it's nothing personal, Craig. I don't really look at you during our. I
Right.
like to hear what we're talking about.
Me too.
And so I don't look at you. But This reminds me of us being in the car together.
Yeah.
So maybe we ought to call it car conversations or something like that.
We call it in the car, pants down.
Well,
Very
so weird.
as we have been laying the foundation for our podcast in these first many episodes, we've been telling you about our backstory. And during episode 4, we were talking about our parents. And I said, our parents deserve an entire episode. We need to do that soon. So here in episode 7, we're going to talk about our parents, who they were, how they raised us, because they created us and informed much of how we view the world. So we think you should know their stories because they are, in a very large way, our stories. So today is about our parents. How do you guys want to do this? Do you want to talk about the moms first? Do you want to talk about the dads first? Do you want to talk about them as couples?
Maybe we should start with moms because we talk about our dads so much. Do our dads get top billing?
Yes. So far
Which
in
is-
this podcast, they have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is strange because moms did the heavy lifting, I
You
think.
spend more time
Mhm.
around your mom,
Yeah.
I think, growing up than you do your dad.
Yep.
But is it just fathers and sons that always have us talking about our dads because
Maybe that's it.
they are our shadow selves one generation removed?
Yeah. My wife is convinced of that I get more pub with my kids than she does. But she's been so great with them through the years. They just absolutely adore her, as they should. But, I feel like that sometimes. And I feel like I've been guilty of that, talking about my dad more on our radio show than I have about my mom, and maybe it's just because he played sports, he was in the military, and it applies to things we're talking about maybe more than my mom. But Gordon may have quoted his mom more because she had so many funny sayings to try to calm him down.
Right.
That maybe you have talked about your mom more.
Yeah, I've talked about both of them quite a bit. But certainly while growing up, I was much closer with my mom. You know, my dad was it was very interesting because my dad changed throughout his life so much. You know, early on when we were growing up, my dad was he was kind of scary in a way because he was more moody when we were younger because he was very busy. And so when he was at home, he was always having to work on sermons or do church stuff. And it would just seem like he was always preoccupied with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so kids making noise wouldn't go over so well. and so we were our mother's children. That's the way it felt. You know, my mom was a stay-at-home mother, so she was around us all the time and was our whole world. You know, Your mother truly is your world when you're young. And then, so Dad, you know, was this guy that you just didn't want to piss off.
Right.
Because you get in trouble with your mom and you can game it. You can, you know, if she ever threatens to spank you, just run away from her. And then she, you know, you can play on her guilt so she won't even spank you or anything like that.
Put your hands back there and maybe block a couple shots.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd be fine.
Whereas Dad, the few times that Dad did the corporal punishment, which used to be a thing, which seems crazy to us now.
Yep.
It does, but it had some merit to it.
Here goes George
Well,
going
I'm just
pro-violence. Pro-violence in child rearing.
It worked on me.
It worked on me too. You know, not that I didn't do, you know, misbehave and would face a punishment, but all I knew at a very young age about my dad was that he was at work a lot. He was a large man, and he was at some point in the military and fought the Japanese in World War II. So that's what I knew about him, and I was scared to death of him. And then I realized that he did have a softer side. He was a very sweet person. But I'm thinking from as far back as I can remember to the age of about 5 or 6, I just viewed my dad as, that's the dude you don't mess with.
Right.
and you do from posture to everything. I just, I tried not to disappoint him, and I tried to walk a straight line. And then I realized, okay, as I got a little older, I certainly tested him. But with your dad, Craig, he was always seemed like such a sweet and calm person. Did you have that same fear?
I did. And by the way, here we are talking about starting with our moms, but we're talking about our dads.
Yeah. We reversed.
It's
Way
amazing.
to go, George. Way to
so
go.
I guess we'll start with our dads, but yeah, I feared my dad, and I spent more time with my mom like all of us, but my mom also worked for as long as I was in childhood. She was working from day one. She was a nurse. And so, you know, I had a lot of alone time with Dad as well. And then my sister was born quickly after I was born. But Mom was the one that we went to for nurturing because she was a nurse and loving. And she was the one that would rub our back to make us fall asleep and cook our food. Although Dad, when Mom was at work, also cooked. He cooked 2 things, daddy burgers and peanut butter toasted sandwiches.
Heck yeah.
That was his rotating menu. They were just regular hamburgers, but called them daddy burgers. But yeah, I got probably 3 pretty good spankings from Dad. They were few and far between, but they were memorable and they worked.
Yeah.
So there was that threat that was constantly there, and we never feared a spanking or anything from Mom. I'm not sure she ever spanked us, but Dad was a very, easygoing. I mean, he could be stressed out at times too, but for the most part, he was fairly laid back. And, you know, as my cousin Tony always called him, he's a peace-loving man. Mm-hmm. In fact, Tony gave my dad a T-shirt one birthday that said peace-loving man on it. So, yeah, he was very sweet and very nice, but the threat of a spanking was always there, so he was definitely the disciplinarian.
And why is that the only thing that worked? Was the threat of paternal violence was the only thing that really, I think that I respect it as being, okay, that's something that you cannot go past.
Yes.
You can sit there and goof around and whatever punishments my mom would try to give me is like they never really worked. It was only when she says, "Okay, I'm telling your dad when he gets home." And me,
Yes.
no, please, let's broker a deal. Let's broker a deal right now. Don't tell him.
Yeah, or even worse, I'll tell you what, I'm going to let your dad deal with this when he gets home. Go sit in your room until your dad gets home.
That's okay.
Talk
That's
about
okay. No,
death
I'll do something
row.
else.
I
Yeah.
mean, you're just going
Yeah.
there and you're just waiting. And I'm not proud of this, but it was just kind of the way of the time. And again, I had older parents. They were from the greatest generation. They were born in the 1920s. And so they went through the Depression. They went through World War II. And we got the belt.
Yeah.
And sometimes it was just a spanking, but sometimes I remember at least twice. It only took twice, 2 times, getting the belt, and it was terrible. But I remember thinking, whatever you do the rest of your life, just don't cross this man, whatever it is. And he wasn't unreasonable. It wasn't like, hey, you made a B instead of an A, or I never got punishment like that because of grades. But it was behavior, and if it was something that I was really guilty of, whether it was foul language or throwing rocks at cars, I learned at a young age
That you
was
don't
so
do that.
wrong. You don't do that, and this is what happens when you do.
Why don't we start with the Dick Dunham story, since he was the oldest of our 3 dads? He was born in Missouri?
Born in Missouri, Pierce City, Missouri, little town in the southeast section of the state, one of 6 kids. His dad was a World War I veteran, which comes into play because when he was an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
He was on the Pierce City swim team, diving team, played basketball. I think I've showed y'all pictures of him playing sports, that basketball uniform, which is just ridiculous, that he wore for Pierce City. He also played football.
Played end.
He played end.
Generic position.
And I've
So
showed you the
generic.
program that he was in when he played military ball right after Pearl Harbor happened in 1941. And he never told this to me, but he told it to my nephews. He said he and his friends got so damn mad that they went and signed up. And my dad went into the Marine Corps. He became a naval pilot.
He was the
Marine
original
pilot.
Pat Tillman. He got so moved by the
He was so
fight.
moved, but it seemed like the majority of men in 1941 here in this country wanted to do something, because as we learned recently, Marv Levy said that was a must-win.
Yes.
World War II.
Somehow,
must win.
World War II was a must-win.
But he
and-
lied, didn't he?
No, he was of age
Okay.
because
A lot of men did lie,
They
or
did.
a lot of boys did lie.
Yeah, and they were really 16 or 17, and they said they were 18, and I guess we didn't check every birth certificate.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We didn't have a lot of
They didn't go on
truthers going
Facebook to make sure.
on back then. But yeah, what a time that he went through. He didn't talk much about World War II, but he talked a lot about the Depression. And I think that made such a big impact on him because they didn't have much. They lived in a small town, and his dad was a painter, would paint houses and sell paint. And they didn't have much with the 6 kids, but they felt like they did because while they ate a lot of cornbread and whatever they grew in their garden, one of the most heartbreaking things is he would tell the story of going to school, and this would have been by the early 1930s, and this country's right in the middle of the Depression, and the kids would steal his lunch.
Hmm.
And all he had was a piece of cornbread with butter,
Right.
but they would steal. I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
Think of
Yeah.
all the things we have now, and we still have poverty. We still have extreme poverty in this country. But back then, it affected most of the population. And just to make it through that, and then, okay, now that you're an adult, go fight for for freedom, and let's not let these evil powers take over the world. I can't imagine, and we referenced this in a previous episode. I wish I would have done what Gordon did and sit down and get record of this, not only for me, but for my kids and my grandkids. This is what your grandfather, your great-grandfather went through. What was life like in 1933, 1941, 1945 when it was over? What was that like? And I got stories through the years, but I didn't document them, and I really wish I would have.
Yeah, my nephew sat down with my dad before my dad passed and did 3 or 4 hours with him.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah, really great that we have that on the record. So after your dad serves in the military and he's a pilot, did he ever think about becoming a commercial pilot, or where did his professional life take him?
He loved flying because he did talk about flying and some things that happened to him and, scares, landing on an aircraft carrier, which, again, I wish I would have documented that. What was that like to land on a moving
I don't see
vessel
how they do that.
that, with 8-9-inch swales on the ocean. But he wanted to get his degree. So he went back to the University of Missouri, got his degree in business, and
Generic.
went into business, and he went into commercial roofing eventually, but he started working for W.R. Grace Company, and he met my mom. She was at Columbia College Christian College in Columbia, Missouri, where the University of Missouri was, and that's where they met, fell in love. They became young parents within a year of them getting married in 1948. But within a year of being married, they had my oldest brother, Tad, then Nancy came 2 years after that, and then Rick came 2 years after that, and then Laura came 2 years after that. So they became professional parents at a very young age, not too far removed from being married, not too far removed from World War II. So, I was born as a child of the 70s, I guess, because I was born in 65. I've always told you guys I've considered myself a baby boomer because I grew up with parents who were having the baby boomer generation.
Mm-hmm.
And my brothers and sisters were older, but he always loved flying. And I don't know if this story is true or if I've manufactured it because no one else can confirm that it happened. But his mom lived on a farm after my dad was out of the house and all of his siblings. And we used to go visit the farm in Montgomery City, Missouri. And one of my uncles was a crop duster, and he would fly these planes and put pesticides on crops in Missouri. And I swear, we went down there, and my dad had a couple of beers and swore he could fly that plane. And the next thing we knew, the house was being buzzed by my dad, who did not have his pilot's license anymore. It was 30 years after the fact, but I'm pretty sure that story is true. And it just made even a further legend.
Right.
Oh my gosh, my dad not only flew Corsairs, the F4U Corsair, but he could get in some random plane in 1975 and fly it. And I'll go with that story is true. That's the way I remember it.
After a few beers.
After a few beers, which gave him enough liquid courage to go, yeah, I bet I can figure it out. And if that story is true, he did figure it out. And yeah, but there was a soft side to him as well. He was a musician. He played trombone in the Missouri band. My niece still has his trombone, his beautiful silver trombone that my brother played growing up. And he loved music, not the music that I like so much, but he could play piano, he could sing, he had this beautiful voice. And both of my parents, I really looked up to him and I grew to appreciate him into my adult life, that they had remarkable lives. They lived just going through the time that they went through. They went through a remarkable time in our history.
Gordo, Dr. Jim Keith.
Yes.
Your father, a Baptist preacher, did he always know he had a calling to do that?
He got the calling when he was in college. He was at Mississippi State. He was a football player. And I think that he wanted to be a professional athlete, to be quite honest with you, because he loved playing football.
Didn't he get a letter from the Cowboys?
He did. And the Falcons also. We have some stuff from the Falcons kind of courting him. And but yeah, I think the Cowboys sent him a watch, and I think he got a letter from Landry and all this kind of stuff.
Wow.
I need to find that stuff.
Pretty cool.
But yeah, so he was at Mississippi State playing football, and there was one of the star football players on the team of that time invited my dad to the Dallas Baptist Student Union or something. And my dad went with him, and I have all this stuff written down. I wish I would have found it and brought it. Invited him and my dad. He started getting really back into church then, and soon after felt the calling, and then he switched from Mississippi State University to Mississippi College, which was a Baptist university, to play football there and start studying to become a minister. So that's where he got the calling, was while he was on the Mississippi MSU campus.
Interesting.
Yeah, where Dak got the calling to go be a Cowboy quarterback. My dad got the calling to go be a Baptist minister.
Didn't your dad line up across from Joe Namath?
I don't know. That
Or
may
there
be
was
true.
or Bart Starr. It was when they played Alabama.
Oh, yeah, there was some kind of story. Yeah.
Didn't he play against Joe Namath?
I'll
I
have
think
to
was
ask
the story.
my brother about this. Because see, you would remember sports stories better than I could.
You tuned out because it was sports.
Yeah, I
and
didn't understand any of that. But yeah, and so he became a minister and kind of quickly rose up the ranks in the Baptist, what's it called? Southern Baptist Convention.
There you go.
Thank you. And, so each church was a bigger church than the last, and we would only stay at a place for 3 years at a time, probably, before he finally ended up here in Dallas at First Baptist Church of Richardson, Texas. And we actually lived in Dallas proper. Richardson is a first-ring suburb, I guess, of Dallas. And so, so I grew up a preacher's son, which was like the worst thing for me to grow up to be.
So, at what point did you think, I don't know, I wish my dad wasn't a preacher because I have to really walk the walk? When did you start feeling that presence of, gosh, I really am in a different spot here because I'm a preacher's son?
I think I felt that early on. Yeah, that you're carrying the family name with you everywhere you go. And, times were probably a little bit different back then, and I was in a smaller town too. So when I was in elementary school in Gulfport, Mississippi, my father was the preacher of the First Baptist Church of Gulfport, Mississippi. So that carries with it, a bit of a, kind of a royal family type thing.
Everybody in town knew him.
Yeah,
He was,
and church was bigger in people's lives back then, it seems, and in culture. So it was a bigger deal, and I naturally had impulses of class clownmanship, so I would be getting in trouble. And I remember this, gosh, I can't believe I'm telling this story. So in second grade, I remember going through, kids today won't understand this, but when you were a kid back then with no internet, no phone, nothing to do, you either played outside or you learned every square inch of your house as well. Like I knew what was in every cabinet, every drawer, everything, because you'd just be bored looking around. Because your, childhood in the 70s was house arrest or go out to the exercise yard, which was the entire outdoors.
Right.
So I remember finding in my dad's sock drawer this coin. And on one side of the coin, there was a woman, a topless woman, an engraving, like a coin impression of a topless woman. And on the bottom, it was the naked rear end of a woman. And I thought this was the most magical thing I'd ever seen in my life. Now, why a Baptist minister had this, I had no idea. But I thought this was incredible. This is how hard up we were for seeing a naked woman when I was growing up. Is that even just a stamped coin would be something you needed to show your friends. So I took it to school to show my friends. Hey, look at this. Look at it. This is what women's breasts look at that. If you can see on this monochrome woman that's stamped into copper, look at this. And look, she's got a bottom. It's so cool. She's got a bottom.
Would that do it for today's internet porn generation?
So my teacher at the time, she sees us back there causing a commotion in class. What's going on back there? What do you have?
No.
And I had to take this coin up to her. And I had it. And I have to explain to her, I'm sorry, I found this in my dad. And this is my dad. He's a Baptist preacher. So what is he doing with this thing?
Right.
And I'm telling the teacher, I found it in my dad's sock drawer.
Throwing him under the bus.
Yeah, throwing him under the bus. And so she called my parents. I got in trouble, because I'm disrupting class, showing them nudity, although this is like practically Roman fresco at Pompeii type nudity. And so my parents, they get me and I'm in trouble and everything. And I got in trouble for that, and I got a talking to. The story behind the coin, my dad, I remember him laughing at it. My mom was mortified. She always felt the family humiliations much more than my father ever did. Any sort of perceived loss of face or stature would affect her a lot more than Dad. But I remember my dad laughing, and he told the story of how he came to get that coin. He said that they received it in the offering plate. It was some dude who had it as his, settle a bet coin, flip coin. That's a funny thing that they would give away back in the day. That heads or tails is what it was. A heads or tails coin. And some dude had emptied his change into the offering plate, and they had the woman who did the counting and gathering of the money and sorting of the money at the church had called my dad and said, "Hey, we got this in the offering plate." And my dad thought it was so funny. He kept the thing and said, "Okay, that's okay. I'll take it." And he put a quarter in there and took that coin and took it, and he just never got rid of it. He just had it and threw it in, and that was it.
How funny.
But I found it and took it to school and got in trouble for it.
Thought it was the most amazing thing you'd ever seen.
But that was an interesting time when I was so scared of my dad's reaction, and he had laughed it off. And, back in those days, it didn't seem like my dad laughed off as much stuff. But there were several times throughout my growing up where my dad would surprisingly throw me a curveball and stand up for me or take my side or have mercy, which is the interesting view that we have of God. People often say that, your image of God is created by the father that you had. If you interpret God, if you believe in God, to be a judgmental God, if your dad was big on law and order and punishment. And if he's merciful, then you see God as a merciful God.
Yeah.
Well, I saw him as both of those things because my dad had those few notable moments of mercy and then those few very notable moments of getting the belt, which were horrible. But yeah, there was that time I remember. There was another time when my mother was appalled because my brother and I started growing our hair long and getting in bands. And she really didn't want us being in bands, rock bands.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God, what are y'all doing? And I was growing my hair out long, and she was always on me about that hair. She hated my hair, my long hair, and I always had great verbal jujitsu with her over that, talking about how, Mom, Christ is my role model here, and,
Right.
And I'm merely emulating the Savior. So, but
so cheap.
But yeah, I remember using that line with my dad one time. Because this is around the time I really wanted a car and I had long hair and everything, and did the old Dad, Jesus had long hair. And he said, "Yeah, and you'll notice Jesus walked wherever he went, too." Great line.
That is an awesome line.
But I remember my mom getting on to me one time, and my dad said, "Hey, Sandra, let him figure it out on his own. It's not the end of the world. He's got long hair. Eventually people cut their long hair. It's okay. It'll be fine."
Yeah.
Wow.
And she stopped. She stopped.
Both of my parents kind of let us do whatever we wanted within reason, but they weren't strict parents, I would say. They let us kind of find our own way. They tried to introduce us to instruments and sports and, travel a little bit, but for the most part, after I had a kid, when anyone would ask me, "How are you going to raise the kid?" I would say, and I think my sister would confirm this, we'd love to raise our children the way our parents raised us because we felt like we had a great childhood. And my dad was from East Texas, actually born in Breckenridge, which is a little west of the Metroplex in North Texas, but he grew up in Longview. And the moment in his life where he graduated from Longview High School, a Lobo, where he didn't play sports, he always told us he wrestled, but we could never confirm that. But I think he just wanted us to think he played a sport and tried to pick one we couldn't verify.
Yeah, they didn't keep good wrestling records back then.
I'm not even sure they had a
safe.
wrestling team back then. But when he was 18, he decided to go into the Navy. And my sister and I always talked about that moment for him because they weren't a family that had a lot of money, and I don't think he thought they could afford to send him to college. And he thought, I'll just go to the Navy, make some money, send some money back home. He was the oldest of 6 kids. Yet he was a brilliant man. He did the New York Times crossword puzzle every day. He was well read on every topic. You could talk to Dad about anything. And he had this great mind. And my sister and I always felt like he should have gone to college. We felt like he should have been a college professor. That's what he was built to do because he loved to get up in front of people and talk and tell stories and teach you. And yet he went into the Navy. But whenever I talked to him about his life, do you have any regrets? Do you wish you had done this or that? He would always say no. Loved his time in the Navy. He spent 9 years in the Navy, pretty much the entire 1950s. He was born in 1932, like your parents, George. My parents grew up in the Depression. Yeah. They were Depression-era kids. And in the Navy, he went from basic training in San Diego to then he got an assignment at Kodiak Island in Alaska. And he was the base commander's right-hand man. And he spent about 2 years up there, made some great friends, told a heartbreaking story of one of his friends was a pilot and crashed on the Kodiak airstrip and lost his life. But at the time his tenure at Kodiak Island expired was also the time that the base commander was retiring. And the base commander called him into his office and said, Bob, your time is up here. My time is up too. I'm retiring from the Navy. He said, where do you want to go for your next assignment? I've put in for you to be stationed in Corpus Christi because I know you're from Texas. And my dad said, I joined the Navy to see the world, to get out of Texas. I don't want to go back to Texas. And the base commander said, okay, well, just go to Washington and wait for your orders. So Dad finished his time at Kodiak, flew to Washington, D.C., and was just staying there. And he said he stayed there for like a month and never got any orders. And then one day somebody came in and said, you need to go get your shots. And Dad said, why? The guy said, because you're going to Paris.
Wow.
That's what the base commander did for him.
Dang. Send him to Paris.
Sent him to Paris because he liked him so much, and he knew he wanted to see the world, so he sent him to Paris. So Dad was stationed in Paris for 3 years, and, when he was off on the weekends or whenever, he would travel to Switzerland and made friends there and travel to Italy. I think he saw the Pope in Italy. Wow. We grew up Catholic. He grew up very Catholic. My mom really grew up Catholic, which you'll hear about. And then after that, he flew back to, was reassigned to Washington, D.C., where he worked at the Pentagon. So he had a really fascinating naval career, worked there for 3 years.
That time we spent in college when we went to see, we stayed with your parents, but we went to snow ski in Colorado, and our roommate Skip went with us. And I remember sitting down and your dad telling us stories about all of those stops. And I think it went on for hours. It felt like 5 minutes. It was fascinating.
Yeah.
And what a time for him.
He was a great storyteller. That's probably the thing I remember the most about him is when we were younger, we wanted daddy stories because he told great stories.
Yeah.
All the kids in our family, all my cousins, if they were visiting, they wanted Uncle Bob stories because he was such a great storyteller from scratch every night. He would just make up these wild stories that were entertaining and had us sitting on the edge of the bed and wondering what was going to happen next. So I love that about my dad. I love that he was always around. My dad didn't do guys' trips. He didn't go to the bar and hang out with his buddies. He was always at the house. If he wasn't working, he was at the house. So we had this comfort of knowing Dad was always around. Now, was he always paying attention to us at the house? He may have had his nose in the newspaper or his hands in his garden.
But he was around.
But he was always there, so you could always count on him being around. And he had a career in insurance. After he got out of the Navy, he bounced around a few different jobs. He sold sprinkler systems for yards in the early 60s. He was way ahead of his time.
was going to say, we had sprinkler systems back in the 60s.
Yeah, I think if he had
Residential.
started that like in the 80s, he would have been a billionaire. But he started in the 60s and nobody really wanted that. But he went into a career in insurance for 30 or 40 years and then retired at age 65. And I remember asking him, if you could have done anything differently, what would that have been? And as my sister and I always thought, he would have been a college professor. But he said, no, if I had done one thing differently in my career, I think I would have wanted to be a landscape architect because he loved gardening.
Yeah.
And he loved, just kind of designing beds in our yard or planting trees or making a little walkway. So that was maybe his one, passion unfulfilled in his professional career. But I think he died a happy man. He was 88. He loved his wife, and they were married for almost 40 years. And I think he loved his kids. And I think he loved the way his life went. And like you said, George, when I look back on my parents' lives, I think, and my mom's life is extra fascinating, I think, but I think what incredible journeys they had.
I know.
Being born in the Depression era and dying in the computer age is a fascinating life.
Neither one of my parents ever really messed around on a computer. Neither one of them had a cell phone. They started getting, ill in the late 90s, about when all that really started to kick in.
Your dad never had a MySpace.
No, never had a MySpace. No, never had a Twitter account or anything like that.
A GeoCities webpage.
But he was aware, somehow we got my dad on where he could have email and started receiving email before he got really ill. And I remember it just trying to explain because I barely understood it at the time, and trying to explain it to him, the World Wide Web. Why would that make any sense to them?
Right.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the moms. George, Tommy Dunham.
Which is strange right off the top.
It is. My grandfather, I think, wanted a boy. He had Thomasine, Geraldine, and Roberta, 3 daughters. And
Tommy, Jerry, and Robert.
Yeah, we called her Aunt Rob, Aunt Jerry, and they always called my mom Aunt Tommy. My cousins did. Yeah, she was born in Oklahoma, and one of 3 sisters. Her dad, my grandfather, worked in the oil fields. That's how he lost an arm and almost lost his life. And they were very young at the time, my mom and her sisters. And I need to get this confirmed too, but I think they spent some time south of the Texas-Mexico border because my grandfather was working the oil fields down there, and they were babies. I think my mom was maybe 3. And then they spent most of their time in Oklahoma. And my grandfather eventually became a rancher and had cattle. And yeah, she grew up in really small towns in Oklahoma. They moved a lot. And then they moved to Tulsa. She went to Will Rogers High School, Rogers Ropers, and eventually got to go to college. And I think that was something my grandparents wanted her to do because their generation, most kids did not go to college, and certainly women did not go to college. And that's where she met my dad in Columbia. She had my grandfather's toughness. She never really wanted to cross my mom, but she was just so sweet and had just a real gentle voice. And she was at home with us. You mentioned that earlier, Gordo, about how she ran the house. And long before I came along, she had 4 kids under the age of 6. I still don't know how they did that.
I don't either.
But I just as my dad made his way through World War II, I give my mom so much credit to making it through the World War II version of being a mom.
On the Dunham front.
On the Dunham front. How did they do that? And, and they would describe those times as very happy. And I can relate to that because when my kids, my 2 older ones were little, and then when my youngest one came along, there were times when it seemed very chaotic, but I wouldn't trade those days for anything. And I think they were all very happy, and they were shocked to find that I was coming along 10 years later to my closest sibling. But yeah, my mom ran a very strict household. You had expectations of what to do around the house. You had your responsibilities of keeping your room clean, not making a mess, being respectful, eating the proper way. I can't tell you how much time I spent at the table with the proper posture, using a spoon the correct way. All that was
Wow.
really important. And now I look at how our kids grew up and grandkids. It's like, oh my gosh, this is how you come up in conversation.
Like a bunch of apes eating.
What would my parents be thinking of this and how it's going down right now? But she was a great cook. She had a really nice voice too. She was a really good singer. And then I was so proud of her that when I look back at it, that later in her life and as I got older, the nest was pretty much empty. I was going off to junior high and high school, and she got her real estate's license, sold real estate. And I thought that was really cool. And then she was also a great caregiver to my grandparents. We lived in Texas, moved back to Texas. And I think a lot of the reason why we moved back to Texas was to be close to my grandparents who were getting late in life. And she took great care of my grandparents, including my grandmother who lived with us for the last year of her life. She had cancer. And boy, does that still happen today? Do you still take grandma into the home and help take care of her?
Seems more rare these days.
It does. And I almost think we need a cultural shift to go back to those days. As I get older, I want someone to take care of me in that way. But
stuff you in a home somewhere.
Yeah, it's probably just as well. But she took care of people. That was one of her greatest gifts to all of us as kids. Is this is how you take care of people, whether it's your neighbor or your own kids, or in her case, her mom and dad. She was just really pleasant, and I never, just like your mom, Craig, and your mom too, Gordo, I never heard her say a cuss word.
My mom had fake cuss words.
Fiddlesticks and things like that.
The one
Switch,
I remember
my
is
mom's big one.
because my mom just had a house that was just chock full of knickknacks. There were so many. Good Lord. Does every square inch have to be covered in a knickknack? Just answer me that. That's what my dad would ask her. But yeah, I remember her hearing a loud crash and glass breaking in the other room. And I hear my mom go, "Oh, sugar bears!" Sugar bears was a big one for her. My dad had fake cussing too. His was a flip. Oh, flip.
Flip.
Oh,
That's a great
flip.
one.
He was
That's a great one.
always, yeah, particularly when he's working on a car. You'd get at least a 26 flip afternoon from him.
Well, I pass that. I try not to cuss around my kids, and not that I don't use cuss words, but I tried not to cuss around them because my parents didn't cuss around me. And I didn't think that was something parents should do. Isn't that funny? Parents don't cuss around their kids, and kids don't cuss around their parents.
Yeah.
But when they're away from each
Yeah.
other,
And then they
it's
cuss
like a
all
sailor.
like sailors, right? Exactly. I know. I don't know. It's kind of creepy to imagine kids cussing around parents. But of course, parents that do cuss around their kids, it's like they're used to it. They've already broken the seal, so it's no big deal anymore. And they probably think it's crazy us talking about not cussing around our parents.
But isn't that wild, though, to see an
Yes.
exchange of F-bombs
Yes.
between a mother and daughter?
Yeah.
It's always weird if I see families cussing around each other. Art, over the years on our radio show, we've heard from Sandra Keith so many times because you impersonate her and your dad all the time, Gordo.
Yeah.
And it's always really funny. What was Sandra like? What's her story?
You know, she was she was sweet, but was that Southern Belle matriarch, passive aggressive, had more judgments than you could possibly believe. But always delivered with the honey worded stuff of, that is his second wife. Real.
But you said it in such a sweet tone.
Real
that
kind
it's
of
no big deal.
subtle. We're supposed to read into that there's a judgment in there somewhere, But yeah, she always had at the time I didn't think anything of it as I was a kid. But then as I got older, I really got so tickled at seeing her, the way that those Southern women are back then in the deep South.
She's from Mississippi,
She's
right?
from Mississippi. She grew up, was born in Aberdeen, Mississippi. which is where Mitch Moreland, my cousin, is from.
Ah, yes.
As well. And yeah, just seeing how the Southern woman behaves. And Southern people are really interesting because they are these almost like Shakespearean type characters, and the way they talk is so funny. And my mom was just such a ridiculous font of humor to my brother and me, listening her talk about people in a way that she doesn't. I don't even know if she knew that, Mom, that's kind of judgmental sounding. I'm not. I'm just stating facts.
It's a second wife.
Yeah, I'm just saying that. Let's just say he's not home that much. Always about some neighbor or anything, I've used a lot of these phrases on our show before. The way she used to say, he just stayed drunk. Not a moment of soberness on this guy at all. No, right? She's not talking about my dad. She's talking about some neighbor or something like that. And he ran around on her. It's like, Mom, I'm a kid. I don't need to know what you know about these neighbors.
All of the town gossip.
Why do you have to say that? Nobody ever. And she was prone to just the ridiculous exaggeration of, nobody was just a smoker. They lit one right off the other. Yeah, just smoke constantly. From can't see to can't see. That's all he does is smoke. That meant from morning to night. Before the sun came up and after it went down.
No wonder you and your brother were so entertained.
Oh, it was great. And my mom would have loved to have had a household like Giorgio's where everyone sat up properly and used the right utensils and didn't make noise. Our household was my mom being completely flabbergasted and upset because she couldn't impose that kind of order. And I feel bad for her looking back on it because, she really was this person who set a nice table and would plan beautiful meals for us, and then had different sets of plates, stuff that we didn't even understand. Mom, why do we need 5 sets of different plates for different occasions? Well, that's spode. We only use that. That's in casual dining. And this over here is used for formal. Where did you get that? Well, the dishwasher's full, Mom. That's bone china. You go put that back in the china cabinet right now. It's like there were also dishes that we couldn't use. It's so strange to me as a kid growing up in this household that I was supposed to understand, 700 years of culture of fine dining that made no sense to me. And of course, my brother and I, we lived like absolute feral creatures. With nobody would wash. Would you guys wash a dish? Would you ever just wash one? Because if something was dirty, we would improvise. And it was not uncommon for me to go in the TV room and see my brother drinking out of a huge soup bowl. There'd be ice cubes floating on it and Coke filling the soup bowl, and that's what he used as his drink because we had no clean glasses at the time because no one would unload the dishwasher for her. And she was just appalled at every single one of these breaches of refined Southern etiquette. And, of course, I didn't know it at the time, but I have kind of ADD, and so I was always making noise. That was a big complaint against me. My dad would even say that. You don't always have to be making noise.
That's still my chief complaint.
There is an option called silence. And that's another thing. He was also the master of the subtle, passive-aggressive, You don't always have to be making noise. Always that tinge of smart-assness to it, but it was delivered in that preacher smooth voice that you couldn't quite pin down.
Do you think as you're pushing both of their buttons your entire childhood, that while they were trying to correct you and work through it, do you think they also secretly loved it?
My dad said that he got a kick out of it. This is later in life, after we're adults and everything.
Sure.
And then, of course, later, after we've made my mom live through the hell of raising me, then those stories transformed into funny stories, of things that I would do. And I one time brought that audio in, and you guys heard that because I got a tape recorder one Christmas. It was this red tape recorder that you could, it had a microphone on it so you could record. And so I was obsessed with that thing. I recorded all kinds. It's insanity to listen to it. I'm doing all different kinds of voices and the stuff that I would say on just repeat. There would be words that I would get obsessed with, and I'd just say them over and over again. My sister could tell you all kinds of stories about this.
And you'd secretly roll on conversations.
I'd roll
too.
on conversations. I would, just go in and say the same thing to my mother over and over again, no matter what she asked me or told me to go away. And I would just keep repeating the same phrase and get a reaction. But yeah, there's that audio of me going crazy on a tape recorder of just screaming. And my mom coming into the room because my sister's in there too. And my mom yelling at my sister saying, "Go in there and finish your homework." And my sister's like, "Yeah, but he's not. He's just sitting in here. He's doing nothing." And my mom said, "Yeah, but I can't control him. I can control you."
I can relate so much to your parents. I really can.
So she had already identified that the allocation of resources had to be put to a smart usage. She only has so much control to expend, and she's got to use it on the one that it actually works on. And I was probably like 10 then and already a lost cause. She had written me off. I can't control him. I can control you.
Wow.
Yeah,
What a household.
She was interesting, and it was interesting to see, as they got older. My mom always said she was very consistent. She was a stay-at-home mom, and then she went back and taught kindergarten for, the last part of her life. And in the end, when they died, and they died 8 months apart to the day, on the same day, 8 months apart. My mom passed away first of cancer, and then my dad died. He had multiple myeloma, but he ultimately died of heart failure because he also had some heart issues. But their two deaths were very different. My mom had always consistently said to us that the greatest time of her life and the greatest joy that she felt a woman could have was being the mother of small children. She loved it when we were young.
Yeah.
Loved it. And she was so wonderful during that time when we were young. When we became troubled teenagers, she did the best she could with not much material. We weren't giving her a lot to, particularly me. But I think that was the happiest time of her life. And when she died at the age of 72, which sounds young now, her passing was very peaceful. Like she had a real sense of completion to her life. Mm-hmm. She had raised her kids and she had seen them all to grow up, have good jobs, have good families, and she was content. And there was no sense of restlessness when her death came on. She even did that thing, and I wrote about it in the Dallas Morning News. She had gone through her house, and here's a woman who spent her whole life collecting things, and she got rid of her collections, one by one, give them to friends, give them to charity, whatever, and prepared the house for her death. Mm-hmm. And when she passed away, it was like this very peaceful thing, and I was there holding her hand when she passed, and 8 months later, I was there for my dad because I was the child that lived closest to them, and so that was kind of my responsibility, and in a lot of ways, my honor. Like I have a lot of trauma associated with his deaths, but I also have a lot of a sense of closure too, because there was nothing that I left undone.
Yeah.
I felt I took good care of them, and I was there for them for this. But when my dad passed 8 months later, I don't think he was done living. Mm-hmm. And that's the part that haunts me.
Sure.
There were more things he wanted to do, and there were more, he was writing a book. He wanted to go see things and travel, and by that time his body was so debilitated. I was able to take him to Scotland before my mom died even, which was a lifelong trip. And then after my mom died, I took him back to his home in Mississippi, and he got to say,
Yeah.
So we took that trip together, and when he passed, one of the last things he said to me was, "I didn't know it was going to end like this."
Oh, man.
I know, and he was struggling for breath, and so he was aware, and whereas my mom faded out, my dad was an abrupt stop.
Yeah.
And that is a tough one.
We should all be as fortunate as your mom to have it in that way, where it's wrapped up kind of the way you want it wrapped up, and you feel good about everything. And I think the opposite from my parents. When my dad passed away, he was 88, And I think he felt like he had done everything he could do. And I think he was fine. And when my mom passed away, she was 74, very close to your mom's age, Gordo, and also cancer claimed my mom. And I think she felt like, because she had young grandkids at the time, my sister's kids were very young, and she felt like she had a lot of living still to do, but she didn't get that chance. You talked about your dad was writing a book. My sister is currently writing a book. You know how that goes. She's been doing this for years.
Mhm.
I hope one day she publishes this, because she's writing a book about my mom's life,
Oh, wow.
because it's such a fascinating journey. She was born in 1930, Depression era, North Dakota, on a farm, little town called Glen Olin. So imagine how hard life was for
Oh, my gosh.
anyone on a little farm in North Dakota, those winters that last 10 months. And she was one of the youngest. She's got one brother younger, but there were 7 kids, actually 8, but one died in childbirth, which happened a lot back then.
Sure.
So 7 kids growing up in North Dakota, and their parents died very quickly after my mom was born. So she only had her mother and father around for the first few years of her life. And then I think pneumonia claimed both of them, if I'm
Good
not mistaken. But they didn't have heat back then. They were, working themselves to the bone, and just a really tough upbringing. But she did all right. She was the valedictorian of her high school class. There were only 18 in that class, Glen Olin, but she was the valedictorian. So she had that
pretty
on her
awesome.
resume.
So she graduated 18th from the bottom of the class.
Right. She went to college, but it was a package deal where she also entered the nunhood. She was raised Catholic, and she became a nun, and they put her through college at the University of Seattle. She left North Dakota, went to Seattle, Washington. She was there at the same time of Elgin Baylor,
Dang.
the Lakers great. Don't know if they dated. Don't know if well, probably not if my mom was a nun, but don't know if she went to basketball games. But anyway, she became a nurse and a nun. And when I think of my mom, I think of one word, and that is selfless, because she spent her entire life taking care of other people, serving God. She was a nun for 15 plus years before she left the convent, because, as she said, God wanted her to go forth and give birth to an AM radio broadcaster.
Yeah, it was very
That
important.
her mission in life. No, but seriously, she did feel like she had a calling to have a family. She really wanted to have a family. But she served God for 15 years as a nun. Then she was a nurse her entire life, so she was taking care of others.
Mm-hmm.
She was a registered nurse and worked all through our childhood. And then she later in life became a teacher and a counselor. She taught psychology and nursing psychology at Oklahoma State at the Technical Institute in Oklahoma City when we lived there. And then when we moved to Dallas, she became a counselor at a local hospital for kids and adults who were going through drug addiction.
Wow.
So
And
she's
serving people. Yeah.
constantly serving people. And then she had a lifelong charitable community service element to her life. She was heavily involved in Meals on Wheels and did everything she could do at her church, and was just always about helping other people. And it always makes me feel awful, because I feel so selfish looking at my life compared to hers, when hers was all about serving other people. I don't know that we have many people that are cut like that anymore, cut from that cloth,
I know.
where I'm so interested in getting my bike ride every day.
Yeah.
And, figuring out what I'm going to watch on TV that night. And those things never entered her mind. She had her own, hobbies. She loved to read, and she was a great cook. But taking care of her family, taking care of her patients, taking care of her students, taking care of, those in need in the community, that was her MO for her entire life.
She had a great laugh too. I remember your
Yeah.
mom's laugh. You must have cracked her up a bunch.
Oh yeah, and she cracked herself up a lot. As smart as she was, she also had a little bit of a scatterbrained airhead quality to her, which was really funny. And the story that my sister and I always think about when we think about my mom, I was probably 10, my sister 8. We're in our house in Oklahoma City. My bedroom was in the very back, my parents in the very front, and my sister in the middle. And I got up to go to the bathroom 2 a.m. I go to the bathroom. I had one off of my bedroom. And as I'm leaving that bathroom, I hear my mom, the most blood-curdling scream, "Ah, there's someone in the house. Bob, there's someone in the house. He's in Craig's room." I hear this, and I dive into my bed, which must have been 10 feet away, get under the covers, and I'm like, holy yes, there's somebody in my room. And then I hear my dad, "Stay away from him. You stay away from him."
That ought to do it.
That'll do it. Yeah. Firm command.
And my
Robert's
sister, and they had come halfway back to my room down the hallway. And so my sister's room was halfway back. So she's looking at my mom screaming and my dad in his underwear screaming. And then like a minute later, I realized there's nobody back here. I'm the only one back here. And I walk out of my room. I said, "There's no one here. It's just me." And I see my parents standing there in their underwear. And then my mom just starts dying laughing because she realized she was half asleep and heard a noise and just assumed
Had to be.
somebody was in my room doing something to me. And then so we laughed about that for the rest of her life. She just would in tears thinking about that story. And then we gave my dad hell for the rest of his life about, why didn't you come back there?
You stay away from him.
I tell you, you guy.
Why didn't you come rescue me?
Because the guy was already under orders not to do anything.
That's
to you
right.
Guys, so
Yeah, you were clear.
So yeah, she
Chain
had
of command.
she had a great laugh and she had great moments. Both of my parents were very casual sports fans. And she had so many moments where she wanted to be a part of the conversation, but didn't really know how or what was going on. So I told you that story, the Thanksgiving Day football game between Texas and Texas A&M. And Texas is up in the game 6-0. So they're leading the Aggies. And my mom walks in, and the only play she sees is Texas attempting a field goal, and it's wide right, no good. And she goes, "Oh, Texas, they're hopeless," and turns around and leaves. I'm like, "Mom, they're winning.
They're up." See, I think that was a commentary on the Texas program and that they hadn't returned to the days of Darryl Royal.
Maybe,
yeah, that
maybe.
was the
What she was
subtext
saying
of
there.
what you were saying there.
Yeah, maybe. We're all orphans now. We've all lost both of our parents. It's weird. I know, Gordon, you said that to me because you lost both of yours before I ended up losing my dad. And you said it's just weird when you find yourself in life without parents.
Yeah, because that's the bulkhead against death, right? They're the generation before you, and once they're gone, you realize, oh, I can't hang out in the on-deck circle anymore.
Yeah, you're up.
I'm up.
Right.
I'm in the batter's box now.
Yeah.
And that it's a very strange feeling. Yeah, walking out of the hospital that time after my dad passed, and that realization, I'm nobody's son.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. That is hard. And, it's been a long time. Mine died first, I guess, on the show. Since we've been together, my mom passed in 2000 and my dad was 2004. And it's been so long now. But when I do look back at that time, it was a really sad time. And you, Gordo, going through both of them in 8 months, I remember at the time just thinking, golly, Gordo's going through so much right now. But it really was, as sad as it was, I look back, it was such a significant time because I think I finally really grew up. The whole thing that you just described there is like, my life is different now. And now, to my kids, I have this legacy to leave that they left me. And I wonder how that's going to look. I don't quite stack up to someone who took care of kids like my mom did, and her parents and others around her, and a World War II veteran. But yeah, it was just it was a sad time, but it also, I almost like officially became an adult when I went through all of that. And it was a changing point in my life for sure.
And it should be said, the three of us are very, very lucky that we had both of our parents, all of them into their 70s and
Oh, yeah.
80s. We're very fortunate
Yeah.
to have had them around for our lives. So a very special thank you to Bob and Jody Miller, Richard and Tommy Dunham, and Jim and Sandra Keith for creating us and raising us and loving us. Those 6 people are responsible for the Musers, the podcast.
Co-producers of
Yeah, they demanded
podcast.
EP credit on
Yes.
the podcast.
Oh, gosh, I just thought about explaining a podcast to my parents. How did I do that?
And also thanks to our producer, Peter Welpton. While he didn't birth any of us or raise us, he is parenting us through this
Yes.
whole podcast experience, and we'd be pretty lost
Thank
without
you,
him.
Peter.
And thank you to the listener for joining us on this podcast journey. We have appreciated all of the great feedback these first few episodes, and we hope you'll be with us next week for episode 8 of the Musers, the podcast.
Son, you don't have to tell all our business.
Don't forget, because we're told it's important, take the time to like or subscribe or follow the podcast wherever you may be listening. You can also reach out to the Musers across all social media, but you can also just send an email, themuserspod@gmail.com. The Musers, the podcast, is a Tired Head production.